I went from this savior mentality of saving everybody as this ER nurse and tech. Like, I'll do CPR for days. I loved saving people. And now I'm letting them go.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
Hi, dear family and friends. Get ready for another inspirational and eye-opening story. Thank you so much for listening. And if you aren't already doing so, please subscribe and share, dear family. It means the world to me and makes all the difference. And if you want to continue and contribute to the conversations, please join my private Facebook group, Dear Family Members. You get to see secret photos and videos only Dear Family members are privy to, and you'll even have the opportunity to ask me and my guests questions directly. The link is in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there. My guest today is Tamara Strzelecki, but everyone calls her Tami. She's a blue-haired mama, wife, nurse, and creative entrepreneur who has worked in ED, which is emergency nursing, NICU, Pediatrics, HEDIS, which stands for Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set, and long-term care. But currently, Tami is a hospice nurse. Tami has survived postpartum depression, bullying, nursing burnout, disordered eating, early-onset osteoporosis with multiple rib fractures, depression, and anxiety. She utilizes her social platforms and her ambassador position at Cherokee, the Scrubs uniform company, to normalize mental health disparities, to discuss bullying and lateral violence in nursing, and to let everyone know it's okay to not be okay. When Tami's not nursing or being a mama, she reaches for her sewing machine to create and sell her custom tie-dyed threads and bohemian fashions. Tami is here today to discuss how hospice nursing saved her. After almost 2 years of doing everything she could but nursing, Tami came back to care for the dying, their families, and loved ones. She's honored to care for her patients in their last chapters of their lives, where she can provide peace, comfort, and dignity in death, giving her an incredible purpose to show others how death doesn't have to be scary, painful, or undignified. Hi, Tami. You and I were introduced through our mutual friend, Debbie Singer, and we've been corresponding and following one another on social media, but this is the first time we've ever spoken. So welcome to Dear Family. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm so honored to have been connected with you through Debbie. That was great. And I really enjoyed listening to your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Well, she just raves about you. So I'm so excited about this conversation. So Tami, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, maybe where you grew up, where you live now?
Yeah, so I live in Michigan, and I've always been a little Michigan bum, but I was actually born in a U.S. Army base over in Germany. Both my parents were in the Army, and then I lived over there for probably 6 months, and then ever since I've been a Michigander. I've lived pretty much in the same spot my whole life. Probably a good, maybe 15 miles from where I grew up is where I live now. I currently live on a 10-acre lot out in the country and kind of take refuge out here with our privacy. I have 2 little boys and currently trying to navigate motherhood with growing kids coming out of toddlerhood.
How old are they?
Well, I have one that's almost 4 and another that just turned 6.
Oh, wow. Little ones.
Yeah.
Little ones.
Yeah.
Oh, cute.
And they're voyaging into this new territory of little childhood versus being babies. So it's been a huge change for us.
Oh, well, I love that age. I used to teach kindergarten. It's just such a magical time. So enjoy them.
Did you?
Enjoy
Yeah.
them. So, and how neat to have 10 acres for them to explore and run around. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. A lot of times the boys just go outside and play, and it's very private and kind of set back. So there's no major roads that I have to be concerned about or We have a private drive too, so it's nice and secluded. The boys can play, and they have little four-wheelers and go-karts that they get to ride around and play with on the grass.
Wow, that is a luxury, especially coming from Los Angeles. That just sounds
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah,
Good
like
for
we have
them.
space.
Yeah, you have space. That's amazing. So, Tami, what made you decide to become a nurse?
Well, I kind of fell into it because I was good at being a helper. So my mom has been a nurse for many, many years. And as I was growing up, I graduated high school and I started going into school, and I thought, I think I want to be a Spanish teacher because I really liked my Spanish class. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And then while I started going to school for that, I started working in the hospital as what did they call them then? I would help people
Like
eat.
a candy
I would clean
striper kind of thing?
Kind of. It
Yeah.
wasn't a candy striper. It was like a patient support associate or something like that. But I didn't do vitals or any patient care, really. I just did support services. And I was doing really good at it. And they kept pushing me to learn to do more. And maybe you should become like a PCA, a patient care associate, and do vitals and take care of the patients more hands-on. And so, of course, I was like, fine, you guys are going to train me, so I'll go for it. So they trained me and I started working patient care. And then I started noticing that I really liked the adrenaline rush of working and saving people and helping people.
Wow, I can only imagine that kind of adrenaline rush.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think the ER definitely brought that out in me. And I ended up working in the emergency department. After I tried home care for a while as like a tech, I worked for traumatic brain injury patients, and they were mostly younger pediatric patients. And I actually was let go of my position due to, I'm going to say the patient had some mental disparities after their crash, and they like to fib a lot.
Oh, goodness.
And so they told a lot of little lies here and there, and the lie got me fired. And when I got fired from that job, I dove into something that was really scary and different for me. I dove into ER. And they hired me straight into ER because I'm my mom's daughter. I worked in the same hospital. They all knew me from the floor. And they kind of just took me under my wing, and I started working in there. And after I'd say probably after a year and a half or so, I realized that my dreams of becoming anything but a nurse seemed kind of outlandish because I was just going down this journey whether I wanted to or not. And I was doing pretty well at it. At the time, I had flipped back and forth from a million different things. I think I went from Spanish education to Spanish and English education to interior design to fashion design. And then once I started realizing that fashion design wasn't really going to get me anywhere here in little Michigan, I went for nursing full on.
Well, and you're still doing some creative fashion.
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
talk about that later. But okay, so that's awesome. So you kind of, maybe it was destined in the stars. You also had a mom that was a nurse.
Yeah.
So I was reading one of your blogs about how when you were trying to protect your patients, you ended up being bullied by other nurses. I'm assuming that this may happen more often than not. Can you kind of just tell us in a nutshell what happened?
Yeah, so we're talking brand new nurse kind of action. I just graduated. I went through probably 250 applicants to get this job at this really, I'm going to do air quotes, amazing hospital. The first few weeks were awesome. I started on days, but then we had to switch off of our orientation on days to nights because that was the shift that I had been hired onto. And nights started quickly unraveling. It was a totally different atmosphere. I went from feeling like I had my hand held and people were patting me on the shoulder and telling me I was doing a good job to shunning me in the corner and quiet and lots of whispers and talking behind your back kind of thing. When I started on nights, I had a friend that also worked at that same facility with me, and she had been working there for probably 6 months before I had, and had kind of been giving me an idea of the problems that they had on nights. And basically there was a group of nurses that I'd say were probably in their mid 20s to 30s for the majority of the part. They were like a younger group that I felt like I could be a part of, but definitely was not. And what had happened was we had a lot of issues where nurses were taking naps or not appropriately caring for their patients during the time that they were on their shift. So the issue was brought up that there were nurses that were sleeping on their shift, and they weren't sleeping on a break. They were sleeping like in the rooms. And these are patients that did not have a voice of their own. I won't go much farther than that to protect the population, but I would say that they're one of the most vital populations to keep your eye on because they aren't able to communicate like adults. So these patients were left to their own in situations where they were intubated or unable to care for themselves. They can't do anything. They can pull out their ET tubes. They could do all kinds of things or get themselves in trouble. I saw nurses holding these patients falling asleep. It was bad. And when it was brought up to supervisors, they kind of boo-hooed us and just told us, it is what it is. It got down to the point where there were accusations that nurses had been documenting false documentation because they were napping. So they would go off the floor for a few hours, come back and say that they were there, document the feed or the whatever they needed to do. You know, myself and this other nurse, we immediately got dinged as troublemakers because we weren't about sleeping. We didn't find it appropriate, and we thought that it was unsafe for the patients. We ended up getting supervisors and nursing in general of our floor against us. I had been dubbed Thing 2, and my friend was dubbed Thing 1. We were made fun of. We were ostracized. My friend was actually physically shoved when she tried to do her job to help another patient in the room. And I thought I was doing the right thing by standing up for my patients, standing up for the situations, putting my foot down to things I thought were unsafe. And I kept getting whipped for it from staff and from my management and director. We ended up having human resource meetings that were confidential, and we were talking about some pretty nasty stuff in these rooms. And it was just like, man, I just graduated. Like, I just got out of school and I have to deal with this completely different environment. Like, I got flipped upside down, and this good nurse that I thought I was going to be this nurse that was picture frames on the hallway saying, you know, nurse of the year or nurse of the unit. Like, I wanted to be awesome. And here I was being looked at like I was just shit because I had stood up for a patient that couldn't speak.
You were whistleblowing, something they clearly did not want to face. And it sounds like the administration was probably, I'm guessing, nervous about lawsuits and just wanted to brush it under the rug and continue. So what ended up happening?
We made enough waves. I always tell people, you know, sometimes you just got to reach up the ladder. If the rungs that are immediately above you aren't benefiting you, you know, you got to keep going. And so I went to supervisors. I went to my director, who was also our manager of the floor. I ended up going to the hospital nursing lead officer, and told them what was going on. And that was like probably weeks of talking to this person who was supposed to be the highest nurse in our facility. And she'd give us recommendations and all this stuff. And nothing ever seemed to really happen until one day we were leaving the night shift, and they came in and they said it was probably like 6:45, and we were done at 7, and then we do report. And they were like, oh, we have a surprise mandatory meeting this morning after the shift. They were like, everybody needs to be there, da, 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 da. Well, my friend and I were pretty sick of everything that was going on at the hospital. And we decided that we were not going. Like, mandatory, we don't care. We're going home. We went home. We had another nurse that was sitting in there kind of giving us heads up of what was going on. And our director got walked out.
Wow.
Yeah. So everybody on that floor ended up having to go through the policies about sleeping, about retaliation, about lateral violence, like all the things that we had brought up to our administrator was printed up in policy and everybody had to review it, and it was told to them that they will be signing it, and if it's not followed through, there will be issues after.
But that's amazing, Tammy, because you did. You stood up to the other nurses that were kind of trying to intimidate you and even some of your supervisors, and you made a change. And I guess, in the back of your mind, you were taking that oath of being a nurse to heart, right? You were like saying, like, this is not how it should be. We need more nurses like you.
That's how I feel too. I wish there were more people that were willing to be uncomfortable to make somebody else's life better. I don't know how many, I feel like I get put in these situations where I'm the little whistleblower and I'm like, oh my God, like, why does this keep happening to me? But I think it keeps happening to me because they know that.
Well, it's because you're aware.
The situation that I'm going to do. Yeah.
I would think too, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but being a night nurse or being on a night shift, you are going to be tired, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
And maybe these people during the day are going home and taking care of kids or have multiple jobs. So, I mean,
right.
There's some sympathy there, but it sounds like they didn't own it, right? They didn't say like, oh yeah, I'm so tired, I shouldn't have done that. Please excuse, they just, that's probably where it crossed the line, right?
It did. And it was a lot of, let's put our hood up and just sleep over in the corner while alarms are going off for my patient.
Oh God, yeah. So that's
the kind of situations we were dealing with. And it's like, come on, people. You need to go take a break, go take one. It's fine.
Right. Ask for help if you need it, right? So when you talk about bullying, is this what you're referring to? Other nurses bullying one another? Or are you talking about nurses bullying patients?
So I've seen bullies in all forms.
Right, of course.
I've worked with a lot of bullies, and I have seen nurses that bully patients, but I haven't to the point where I needed to step in and say something. For me, that doesn't seem like an issue that
you're needing to...
to step in for.
Right, all right. You must be a very compassionate person. I can tell you are. And I know that your own personal history probably adds to that compassion. And I mean, you're relatively young to have gone through both physical illness and mental illnesses. But I want to first start by talking about your physical illness that you mentioned, that you have early onset osteoporosis. How did you find that out?
I cracked a rib coughing last November.
Okay. Just coughing.
Like November. Yeah, October, I think it was. I was coughing. I had a cough for, I don't know, maybe a week. So I was actually home alone with the kids. I say home alone because my husband works at times and he has to be away for maybe 24 hours or so. He was like, I think in Ohio or something. And I was out on the porch just trying to get a fresh breath of air before I was going to go to bed. And I had a cough and I was sitting out there and I had just one good, clearing my throat, and I felt a crack.
Oh, God. So did you go to the hospital?
Well, no, I didn't.
Okay.
Because I had our 3 and 5-year-old in their bed sleeping, and I was like, I don't know if I just imagined this, but something happened because the pain was very weird. It was an interesting sensation. Like there was a crack. I kind of felt it through my whole body and there was a little zing of pain, but then it kind of went away. And so then I was like, maybe I imagined this. This isn't real. Well, then I went to bed that night and then I could hardly sleep. And the next morning I was in so much pain. I freaking ran into our mailbox across the street with my car.
Oh, gosh.
Because I went to turn. It was my left rib that broke. And when I went to turn left, with my left hand, my core body strength was nil.
Oh, goodness.
The car just went straight instead of turned. So without a passenger side mirror because of my broken rib.
Oh, my goodness. So you must have had x-ray that told you cracked a rib, and then you found out that you had osteoporosis, which is pretty young. What did you do to help that? Just take calcium?
Yeah, calcium, vitamin D. I needed to eat better.
Oh, okay.
I have an interesting set of situations that I think put me in this line of the early onset osteoporosis. When I was younger, just real quick, I was on a hormonal shot, Depo-Provera, for birth control. And I was on it for probably 5 years. And if you read Depo-Provera, it has a black box warning on it that says you should not use it for over 2 years because it could cause osteoporosis. So big, major ding. Second is I have multiple food sensitivities and issues with my digestion. And so in my 20s, a lot of that changed. My intake changed, everything changed. And I kind of became scared of food. And so I started on this track of not eating instead of eating. So now when I'm in my feels, when I'm heavy in my feelings, I don't eat. It's like I've trained my brain the opposite. I was feeding both of my babes breast milk. I was just pulling every ounce of calcium I had. And then I cracked one rib. And when I went in to get the x-ray, they found 2 other ribs that were cracked that I had cracked probably 4 or 6 weeks earlier doing yoga. Didn't realize I had cracked something. So I had 3 fractures, 2 old ones, 1 new one, and then I got a 4th one.
And you're lifting kids and you're...
Yep.
Yeah.
So I had to stop lifting the kids. Like, it was so painful. I can't even, it's hard to explain. Now I see what people with chronic pain, like before, I've always been an empathetic person, but now it's a completely different understanding because I've lived through so much pain and couldn't do a whole lot about it, you know?
Right. Oh my goodness. I'm guessing, that eating, would you classify it as an eating disorder or was it just food sensitivities?
Well, I have food sensitivities, but I also think I have disordered eating.
Right.
Not quite like a eating disorder where I stand in the mirror and I think that I'm fat or I think that I'm ugly or anything like that. I stand in the mirror and I love my body. I just wish I was hungry.
Oh, God.
I wish I had an appetite.
Right.
My issues are a complete opposite of what a lot of people experience. And for me, it's definitely an eating issue. I did take medications that were supposed to help slow down the breakdown of your bones. And I did take those for a little while, but they were so hard on my stomach. And I probably vomited the first 3 or 4 weeks I took it. It kind of came to this point where I told myself I just need to eat right. I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. I really do need to be better, but I look at myself as a work in progress always.
Yeah, I think we all would say that. We all need to eat better and we all need to take care of ourselves. Okay, so you've also dealt with a few mental health issues. You had mentioned that you had postpartum depression and that you've also dealt with depression and anxiety. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually left my nursing job after my second bout of postpartum depression.
So you had it with both kids?
I've had it with both children, yeah. And it was like it was awful. And it's everything that you read about where you're like, gosh, I love this little thing so much, but I just want you to shut your mouth. Like you just get so overwhelmed and frustrated and tired. And, I learned a lot about myself when I went through those situations. I have found triggers in myself. I have found, issues that make things worse. And I am definitely a person, I pour way too much of myself into others. I don't leave enough for myself afterwards. That was what I was finding when I was having these postpartum issues. I'm here trying to save the world and this baby all at once, and I just want to run and hide. I remember when I left my job, it just kind of pushed me over the edge. I felt unsafe at home. It's the first time in my life I ever considered life being better without me. And to think that, I had just brought these beautiful babies into the world and now I'm thinking it would be better off without me, that doesn't make sense to me now. And I explain to people, like, it's a feeling that comes on out of nowhere sometimes. And I would sit in the bathroom and just sob and sob and sob. And like, my husband would wonder what to do and how to help. And I think over the years, he's come to realize that for me, medication is very important. And after my second bout of postpartum, I stopped breastfeeding at about a year. after I finished, that was like the key to really getting on a medication that would help me and level me out. And ever since, I've been on escitalopram. And I can say that once I started on that, I started feeling a little bit better. I'd say that my depression kind of rolled, like the postpartum depression started morphing into just regular everyday depression, situational. I have family in Puerto Rico that Hurricane Maria came through and wiped out the island, and I like lost myself. It's like I just couldn't get my head off of where my family was or how the people on the island were doing or what I could do to help. And I just felt so helpless, and I felt more depressed, and I kept going more and more and more inside of myself. And it was like this breaking point hit, and I went to the doctor and I said, something's got to give. I'm really scared. Like, I can't even cope taking care of my own kids, let alone anybody else.
Well, I mean, look, hurricanes and sleep deprivation, those are things that are going to add stress to anyone's life, but good for you for going and seeking help. Here you are. And I always think of that analogy of like the airplane, like, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help your children. Here you are giving to your 2 young kids, giving to your patients, and you're not taking care of yourself, right? Good for you for saying, I need to do something about this. So do you also go to any kind of therapy, or you say you do yoga, which I know is very helpful?
I've done some yoga. I have a little bit of fear right now to do much of anything physical.
Because
and I know that
that's okay, but maybe just meditation,
Right. So I do a lot of alone time. I like silence. If not silence, then I want ear pods in so I can listen to something I want to listen to. Because a lot of time I'm just listening to little kids screaming at each other.
Right.
Yeah.
The boys wrestling.
That's right. So finding solitude is really, really important for me. And I find that, sometimes just a nap is what I need to fill myself up enough to do what I need to do that day,
Give you some fuel. Okay, so now you are a hospice nurse. Can you just tell me in your own words, what is a hospice nurse?
I would say a good hospice nurse should be a friend, somebody that you feel confident with and trust, somebody who can take your hand and walk you through some of the most terrifying moments of your life. I think a hospice nurse is very vital in how a person leaves this world. There are huge differences in thought on caring for a person who is thriving and ready for life and a person who is dying. I went from this savior mentality of saving everybody as this ER nurse and tech. Like, I'll do CPR for days. I loved saving people. And now I'm letting them go. I'm actually reeling from a couple really difficult losses lately as a hospice nurse. I'm feeling the stress in the last month and a half. And I finally put in a vacation because I know I need a week off to step away because my emotions are heavy.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with the heaviest of heavy subjects, death. I mean, I can only imagine.
So for the first 6 months of being a hospice nurse, I was still trying to be, like, I feel like I was faking it. First 6 months, I'm kind of faking it. I'm still this savior that wants to fix everything, but I know that I'm here to help you die. And so I would have these like internal battles of, do I fight this? Do I try to make this better? Do I, how do I go about treating this new symptom or new issue without opening a huge can of interventions and worms? It took me about 6 months, and I had one patient in particular that when she passed, it felt like a huge curtain of relief had been opened, and I could feel it in the room. It just felt like the weight of this person's suffering was finally lifted off of them. When you deal with hospice, You are walking into a situation, you don't know how long this person has been dealing with their symptoms. You don't know how drastic their changes have been. You kind of learn these things as you go. You learn a little bit about their journeys, but your focus is really making it the most comfortable journey it can be and to explain things as intricately as you can. Because I can't imagine dealing with death and having no idea what to expect. And, I think our culture is to fear death. And it's sad because we're all going to face that outcome. It's inevitable. So it makes me cringe that our whole lives we're taught to fear it. It's this final grand journey that we're taking. If it's navigated correctly, I think it can be a good one.
Well, and I know you say that death doesn't have to be scary or painful or undignified. Why do you think that?
Because I think a lot of people feel like they lose control of so much of themselves when they are dying. Maybe they lose control of their bowel and bladder. Maybe they are vomiting and they can't keep their food down. Or maybe they're just not eating anymore, or they're having difficulty breathing. And we kind of get to this point where we say, why are you struggling? Like, what is the major thing that's causing you to struggle? Or what's causing you to be uncomfortable? And we talk about that. And then we figure out how we can fix that one thing. Now, if you're having such a hard time breathing that you need medications to help you relax, then sometimes sleeping is a better feeling than being unable to breathe. And so a lot of times we suggest things that maybe, really scare people. They think we're coming in just to knock them out. That's not what we're doing. A lot of times we're trying to keep them from feeling like they're suffering. Make them feel like they're heard. I've had lots of patients that are scared to talk to their family about dying because their family is so scared of them dying. They won't let them talk about it, or they won't let them, say what's on their mind, or maybe they're hallucinating. And instead of telling them that that person isn't there, you talk about what that person looks like and how it feels to be in their presence again. Because a lot of times that hallucination is a family member that has passed before them, that they're seeing in front of them. It can be dignified. All these crazy things that we think are so bad and so awful. Like, it would be just so awful if I couldn't control my bladder. But really, would it if you had somebody to take care of you?
You strike me as an angel, I mean, it's not meant for everyone to take on this position. And I really can't even imagine some of the things that you have dealt with. But I'm also thinking you kind of have this other role of almost being like a therapist, because you're not just there for the patient. You're sitting at bedside with family members during like some of the most intimate moments. I'm guessing you're probably counseling some of these families. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would say that's true. And I have to admit, I pull from my own experiences on how I counsel patients and family members. I talk about my pain and how I've gone through the pain that I have and how excruciating a rib fracture can be, how excruciating 4 rib fractures can be. And I talk about how pain and explain it to maybe a daughter who doesn't understand why her mom needs this morphine. Well, she needs it because she's in pain. Well, she's not showing me she's in pain, or she's not telling me she's in pain. It's because she's scared to tell you she's in pain. You can see her pain in this way, and this way, and this way. And I teach things that are more tangible and less of a guessing game. I talk to patients a lot about depression and their loved ones about depression and anxiety. When we're dying, lots of people experience anxiety, which is absolutely normal. And to explain what a restless person or an agitated, anxious person is doing, a lot of people just look at it as this foreign, like, what is going on with this person? I don't understand. Like, why are they acting this way? Why is she yelling out? Why isn't she staying in her bed? Why is she bouncing all over the place? And to put it into perspective for them, like, we're dealing with a person who is feeling anxious and mentally, she's preparing to die. And that's a very scary thing to deal with. And sometimes we just need medications to help us calm that down.
Wow. And you're deciding how much morphine to administer, correct?
So I work hand in hand with a doctor. I don't prescribe any medications, but what I do is I do suggest dosing changes and things to my physician based on what I've seen. So I have been with a patient, and this was probably one of the hardest patients that passed for me. They were just very resistant to their pain medication, and they were very restless and thrashing around constantly in the last few days of their life. And I remember sitting with them for hours and just calling the doctor back and forth, back and forth. I think I need to administer more. I think I need to administer more. I remember leaving there feeling like I had done a workout. I was sweaty and exhausted, and just the emotional work that goes into it is so big and heavy. Sometimes it's a big release. Other times it's a big boulder that you carry home with you.
And yet you also mentioned that being a hospice nurse saved you. Can you explain that?
I found my purpose again. I think as a human being, we all have this thing in our heart that tells us we have purpose. And that's the thing that if we do it and we feel like we've made a difference in somebody's lives, to me, that means that's my purpose, is to make a difference in somebody else's life. And you would think, I have these 2 children, I have a husband, I have a dog, I have a cat, I have all these people in my immediate life. Why wouldn't I feel enough by helping them? I'm not sure. But when I went back to nursing, the amount of gratitude that a family has for you, it's nothing like I've ever experienced in my 8 years of being a nurse.
That's beautiful, Tami. I mean, I can understand that. I'm so fortunate to still have my parents, but when the time comes, I would want them to feel at peace and be with somebody that cared for them. And I would have such immense gratitude to the nurse caring for my loved ones. So I really understand that. And clearly, as you said, you've had this like helper gene in you, and this filled it for you. So that's really beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly change gears and talk about you were chosen to be a Cherokee uniform ambassador. What does that mean?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. So being an ambassador. So when I first started my nursing Instagram, I've been on Instagram forever, but I started a nursing-based Instagram when I started hospice because I kind of wanted to do something fun that I like doing that was a creative outlet that also connected with hospice, that I was latching onto the purpose of. And so I started my hospice, my Nurse Tami Instagram. As I started looking around and I'm like, man, it would be really fun to get some free uniforms. That was basically what got me interested to begin with. I just would really like some free uniforms because those can be expensive, My dad gave me $60 to buy my first 3 uniforms for this hospice job. I had no money to do so. So that was my first number one. I need new shoes, I need new socks, I need a new uniform. That would be awesome. Well, they started doing this, they had just announced a brand ambassador where they had picked some new nurses as ambassadors. And so I was like, shoot, I kind of missed out on that. Oh, well. And so I was just trying to make waves. I felt like I was hating nursing for so long that I decided that I needed to go at nursing a different way. I needed to look at it differently. And by going in under hospice, it's a totally different environment. I'm not working in the hospital, which I don't think I'll ever work in another hospital. Just a totally different role and environment in general. And so I wanted to share that with other nurses. And I realized how big of there's just massive amount of nurses on social media, insanity. The community is huge. And I started connecting with more and more and more people. And I ended up meeting a really sweet, she's from Guyana. who lives in California and has been an ambassador for Cherokee. And she was like, I think you would be so sweet as a Cherokee ambassador. I'm going to talk to Deb. And so she talked to Deb about it, and Deb like ended up reaching out to me. And it's so much more than uniforms. Like, yeah, I get uniforms and cute shoes and socks and things, but it's like this community that I was welcomed into with open arms that gives me so much of a connection with other people. For the first time in my life, I went for like a California 4-day stay with Cherokee. To think that that would be even a possibility was totally not in my brain when I thought, oh, I want to be a Cherokee ambassador. And now, like, I message Deb and, like, we're friends. And, like, I can message Katie Duke and we're friends. Like, these people that never felt like they were touchable are people that are so down to earth and very friendly. And I've had the chance to meet them because of this opportunity. So.
Well, I love that. And I will have your Instagram link in the show notes so everybody can see how cute you look in your uniforms.
Oh, thank you.
You know, we're going to start wrapping up, but I want you to tell us about your creative side and how do you pronounce it? Is it Shug's Shop?
Yes, Shug's Shop. So a little back history. I was given the nickname Shugs when I was 15.
For like sugar?
Yes, short
cute.
for sugar.
Cute.
It's from my husband. We are high school sweethearts.
Aww.
And have been together forever. And so I've been sewing bags for longer than I have been a nurse. I've been making bags and making things, just creating things out of old stuff. I've always been like a recycler. And so now basically Shug Shop is my shop to use remnant and reclaimed, recycled fabrics. And I make one-of-a-kind tote bags, zipper pouches, things like that. I make scarves.
I love it. They're very cute.
Thank
and you
you.
love to tie-dye, right? Do you make materials yourself?
So I like to dye a lot of found materials. So I'll find something and dye it.
And your link will also be in the show notes so everybody can see those.
Well, thank you.
So, Tami, I ask all my guests this. If you could write your younger 20-year-old self, so like you're going, I guess at this point when you're 20, you're getting your nursing degree. And if you could write a Dear Tami love letter, what would it say?
Probably a little bit something like, sweet girl, the world will test you in many ways. The future will throw heartache and pain. And you are just a beautiful little catastrophe trying to save the world. And it's okay. You're going to fall down on your face and you'll get back up. There's power in the vulnerability. And to never forget that.
Oh, I do love that. Power and vulnerability, right? Yeah. And you must witness that all the time.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful. So, Tami, is there anything that you do that brings you happiness or any kind of happiness hacks that you'd want to share with the listeners?
So I have to admit, sometimes mom mode is super hectic and I want to pull my hair out. And so in order for me to get dinner cooked or whatnot, I have to plug everybody else out of my space. And so I will put in earphones and I will listen to a podcast. Most of them are true crime podcasts.
Oh, love that.
Don't ask me why I have to listen about murders, but it takes me away from the insanity of the moment. And it just puts me in my own space. I also like to close my sewing room and just take refuge in my fabrics. This past weekend, I kind of did that. I have realized that I need solitude in order to continue to pour myself into others. Sometimes I need solitude to fill myself back up. And so over this past weekend, my family, my in-laws have a cabin up north, and we're all supposed to go up there. And Thursday night, I told my husband, I'm not going up north. And I said, you guys can go, and I hope you have a lot of fun. And I hope you don't become angry with me, but I'm not going up north this weekend. I need time to myself. And he was like, what are you going to do? And really, all I did was clean the house and hang around and sew. I did some sewing. I made some bags that I'm really in love with. They haven't sold yet, but I'm really in love with them and I like what I did. And when they came home, he was like, "We really missed you, but I understand why you needed some alone time." I think that's important.
So important. It's so important. I totally understand that. And good for you, again, for knowing that what you needed and claiming it. Sounds like you have a sweet husband.
I do.
So, Tami, what's next for you, or where can we find you?
I don't really know what's next at this point. I'm just kind of floating along, supporting people as I can. And you can always find me on my social network, on my Instagram, Nurse Tami, Shig Shop. I kind of want to dive back into doing some more speeches now that I've done a couple presentations, one on bullying and nursing, another on hospice nursing to nursing students. I think I'd really like to venture back into that kind of arena. I just kind of let the universe take me where I'm meant to be. Nothing crazy in my dreams right now other than keeping on my hustle and
well, it sounds like you're on a great path.
Well, thank you.
You're not only helping others and taking care of your family, you're also listening to yourself and taking care of yourself. So that's really important. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I'm so grateful that you came on, and I'm grateful that there are people like you out there that have this big heart and really want to give back. The idea of being a hospice nurse, just like I said, it's kind of like you're an angel helping guide others. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. And thanks for sharing with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. I appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'll see you on Instagram.
Sounds great.
Okay. Bye, Tami.
Bye.
Bye, honey. This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.